This video will tell you how to at least damage the Winterfang and pretty much completely shut out most tier 10 ships. The Heavy Halo missile is very interesting in that if you build it wrong, you're going to be doing 0 damage to stopped ships. Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. As I get started, I want to of course say this is a PvP video. It's all my own thoughts, no Alliance secrets, haven't checked Alliance builds, none of that. If you don't like me sharing PvP videos, of course don't watch. Now jumping directly into it, the Heavy Halo missile is the first tier 10.5, maybe the only tier 10.5 missile, and it certainly is interesting. You need a level 13 defense platform to equip this. I would expect those to be possible with base parts fairly soon, and Outpost 14 is on the horizon. Now, this weapon is super interesting, and I want to show you two builds that are really not very good before showing you the best one and explain why. Now, first of all, you're saying this is a missile special. Great, let's go ahead and throw on a bunch of penetrative damage. Let you search for penetrative damage, throw on the highest percent ones, which is Thermobaric Casing 4. That's great. Throw on the Fire Support Platform M. That's fantastic. And of course, throw on the next one, which is the Frontline Platform MC. Let's ignore the fact that some people are trying for increasing the reload or the accuracy, and because really reload helps but accuracy doesn't. This is a Merv weapon, which is really interesting. There's a bunch of special things we need to consider. How this weapon works is it does 6 projectiles, each at the listed damage count, and has a chance for the entire thing doing a crit hit at once, which we'll get into. So this build right here works as the first one I thought of and is not actually bad. It has 6 projectiles, all doing about 4.9 million damage, which will certainly do something. This will do even more if you buff it with things like Fire Support, Modified Warhead Stockpile, and the Legion Faction. I'm not currently running Legion Faction, damages shown are without that. So this is a pretty decent build. Alright, well, what if we want to do something like have this do priority targeting so it ignores the Winterfangs and hits the tier 10 ships first? Well, for that to happen, let's just try throwing that on and see what happens. Looks like, hey, that's great, we can do that. And we'll hit the tier 10 ships first, kill the Basilisk super easily. That seems like a pretty good idea, but it's not really going to work out very well. And as we talk about that, I want to talk about the defense stats on this turret. If you're having a hard time killing it, just know you have to break the deflection on here, which is shown, and that means that the corrosive and actually the concussive deflection are very high, so abominations, well, if you have enough building damage, will kill it, but essentially Sky Sabers are the way to go against this thing. If you have the right build on the new Winterfang, like the one I showed yesterday, you are going to be able to kill this. So it does have a bunch of defense stats. It is a 360-degree arc, both of which are interesting, and it does have a very high minimum range as well. Now, the good build I'm going to show you is going to be pretty similar to what's on screen, except for one key difference. You absolutely 100% need to use the Venator Warhead, which is a missile critical special. Critical damage is insanely important in PvP and Battle Pirates since everything is deflection based. This thing says it adds 2.4% damage. In reality, this thing makes it way more impactful. Critical hits are definitely the way to go for this thing, so you really want to be using this special. Now, this seems pretty good, and this is definitely an improvement, but there's something else we need to consider, and that is that this is a Merv weapon, which does, hey, I had a mind finish, this is a Merv weapon, and if you look at the stats, each Merv has a splash of 20, but a spread of 24. What does this mean? Let's go ahead and take a look at a picture. Just ignore all the numbers on this for now, and just look at this beautiful little picture I drew in paint. Now, this blue weapon is the spread. This is where Mervs are going to land around this. This is a circle with a radius roughly 24. And you're going to have 6 shots landing all equally distanced spaced around the circle here on the outside. That's how Mervs work, they land on the outside. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projectiles all around the outside of the circle. Makes sense so far. Now, the tricky part is that each one of these weapons just does damage with a radius of 20, and it hits 24 away from the center. That means if you have a ship sitting in the very center of the circle, you're not going to do damage to it. Let me repeat that. If a ship is stopped, and you have an unmodified weapon, you're not going to do damage to a ship that's stopped. Period. You're not going to hit it, which is absolutely I don't know, mind-blowing. So for that to happen, you actually need to go back and increase splash somehow. For that, let's go ahead and take the weapon that does, or the special that does the least amount of damage, and throw on something that does splash. You're also going to want something that does projectile speed if you can help it. For that reason, I like the Zinth shells too. 35% splash should be enough, and projectile speed is somewhat nice. There again are a few other splash specials. The best one's probably the escalation corrosive casing, or wherever that is right here. Plus 85% is really high, but you don't actually need that amount. I like projectile speed in that case anyway. So this is actually going to lower your damage, and we can go back to our sales spreadsheet and take a look at the results I've summarized there and show you that this thing does 3 million damage per projectile. However, it has a chance at doing 3.4 times that amount, so 10 million damage for a crit, and then you have to consider all the other special things like the Legion faction, Fire Support 2, Modified Warhead Stockpile, etc. Taking a look at the results tab here, the first build right here was the sort of bad one that I came up with, which was using a great damage special, another good damage special, no crits, and it does priority targeting, which is great. And, well, you do 0 damage versus the tier 11. With no crits, you're not going to be able to break deflection, you can't do anything to this thing, and because you have no splash, all your projectiles will land around the outside of the circle and won't do any damage to stop ships, which is, again, absolutely mind-blowing, and of course, this first build actually assumes no faction anyway. Taking a look at our second build over here, we have one that actually has the crit special, which is great, has thermobaric casing, fire support M, and this means that the expected value, once you consider crits, etc. per volley, will actually be 26 million damage against the Winterfang, against tier 11, against the Winterfang tier 11, 26 million, tier 10, roughly 50 million. Now, this is pretty good, and it's, again, a huge amount of damage versus a tier 10. The problem is, this has no splash and won't hit stopped ships. Let me repeat, you run the second build, you're not going to hit stopped ships. Taking a look at the third build here, the one I'm going to recommend, this has the critical special, thermobaric casing 4, and xanthium shells 2 for a splash. This effectively means you take all these red circles and you make them larger so they overlap the center, which is great, which means you're now damaging stopped ships. Once you consider crits and all the different tactical modules, factions, etc. I've shown here, you're going to be doing an expected value of 15 million damage per volley to the Winterfang. Will this be enough? I'm not quite sure. I don't really think so, but again, you're going to be able to damage it, which is what the thumbnail talked about. Killing it will be a different story. The best possible build for the Halos is probably the one on the right here, although you may want to consider having one in your base with priority targeting, just so you can hit a backline Sky Saber, a Basilisk, whatever else might be there. So just going back to the game, the damage build I'm recommending is the one shown here too. I haven't really done hash codes for turrets before because they're really simple to build, and the armor doesn't really matter here, I just have solar reinforcements on randomly. Let me know what thoughts you have, what questions you have on this build. I'll go ahead and get back to you as soon as I'm able to. With that said, going to go ahead and say thank you to everyone whose name appears on screen now. These folks really make the channel possible. Until next time, and as always, this is Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.